This meeting is being recorded.
Voilà. Hello everybody, bonjour à tous et bienvenue à cette table ronde intitulée « Quelle politique publique du livre en Afrique francophone et anglophone ? Regards croisés depuis le Cameroun, le Ghana, le Kenya, le Nigeria et le Togo ». Alors pour le contexte, je rappelle qu'en 2019, l'Alliance internationale de l'édition indépendante, enfin les éditeurs indépendants à l'époque, avait réalisé une cartographie des politiques publiques du livre en Afrique francophone subsaharienne et Madagascar, 12 pays en tout. Alors, cette étude a mis en lumière les dispositifs existants, mais aussi de nombreuses lacunes, notamment en matière de soutien à l'édition et à la bibliodiversité. Alors aujourd'hui, nous franchissons une nouvelle étape, ouvrir le dialogue aux pays d'Afrique anglophone pour comparer nos approches, partager nos expériences et dégager ensemble des pistes d'action. Et pourquoi pas aller vers une cartographie de l'espace anglophone, comme le souhaite IBISO. Alors aujourd'hui, on a la chance d'accueillir des intervenants de premier plan. Alors il y a Ahmad Hudson de Ako Books au Ghana, Liso Graham Douglas de Paperwork Books au Nigeria, Serge Donchuan des presses universitaires d'Afrique au Cameroun. Et je précise que Serge a été partie prenante de la cartographie réalisée sur les politiques publiques du livre en Afrique francophone. Et Mutoni Garland, que nous attendons donc, Mutoni, qui est de Story Moja Publishers au Kenya. Je suis Yasmine Issaka, des éditions Graines de Pensée au Togo, et j'aurai le plaisir de modérer cette table ronde. Alors, pour cadrer le débat, je voudrais vous dire comment il va s'articuler. On va débattre autour de 3 axes. Le premier, c'est un panorama des contextes éditoriaux dans lesquels travaillent nos 4 intervenants. Et là, on parlera des politiques publiques et leur impact, de l'héritage colonial, comment il se traduit en Afrique francophone et anglophone, la question des langues africaines dans l'éducation et la place de l'édition, l'indépendance éditoriale, les rapports de force entre les maisons d'édition indépendantes et les grands groupes. Et là, on prévoit 5 minutes par intervenant. Ensuite, le deuxième axe, ce sera les politiques et enjeux communs relatifs à la bibliodiversité, notamment la liberté d'éditer, la circulation des textes, les questions de diffusion-distribution, l'accès au financement des maisons d'édition, les rôles et actions des collectifs professionnels nationaux. Et enfin, le troisième axe, ce sera les perspectives pour dégager ensemble des pistes d'action, notamment les initiatives qui pourraient être envisagées en termes de traduction, coédition. Et un échange s'en suivra avec le public. Alors, pour entrer dans le vif du sujet, je vais donner la parole tout de suite à Ahmad Hudson. Ahmad.
Hello et bonjour tout le monde. Merci de m'avoir invité. C'est un privilège de pouvoir partager de perspectives du Ghana et plus largement de l'Afrique anglophone. That's the extent of my French today. So thank you so much again for inviting me. I think I'd just like to talk about I think we all know when we talk about publishing in Africa that we cannot escape the legacy of colonial policy. In Ghana, much of and in many other parts of the continent, publishing developed around textbooks, importations, and not really around the nurturing of local and independent creative publishing. So today, our industry really reflects that cultural, colonial sort of legacy and the influence. Um, I think there was a recent study on culture, the cultural policy and publishing Ghana, a very recent study done in June, which makes it clear that the policy frameworks acknowledge that local languages are important and we should be publishing in local languages, but there's just that big gap, you know. Our governments say, yes, it's important for us to do literacy in local languages, but in practice, English is really the dominant language in schools. So I think English is a dominant language for reading, you know, for our young people in Ghana and many parts of Anglophone Africa. And so there's a lot of work for independent publishers to produce works in the creative space. So they're struggling to survive, and they're compared with some of the big multinational publishing companies that are invited in to supply textbooks and curriculum and reading materials that continue to dominate our market. So I think we have good policies on paper, but weak practice. There's a lot to be done in terms of implementing our policies around cultural language significance in Ghana. So just a little introduction, yeah, initial thoughts there.
Yasmine, ton micro est coupé.
Yasmine. Yasmine, your mic is off.
Merci beaucoup, Ama.
Thank you very much, Ama. Now you can hear me, hopefully.
Oui, super.
Yes, we can hear loud and clear.
Je disais donc un grand merci à Ama.
So, as I was saying, thank you, Ama, that shared this interesting overview. And I would like her to share the study she's mentioned because it will be very interesting to us, I'm sure. So, now I'm going to give the floor to Ibiso, who's going to share an overview of what's happening in Nigeria. Ibiso, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Yasmin. I think the Nigerian and the Ghanaian experiences are similar because even till today, a lot of rights for books are still sold UK Commonwealth. So we tend to come under that umbrella. There is no I've hardly ever been to a rights market or a rights meeting where the Anglophone African rights for a book is separated from the UK. So because of that, the UK actually dominates our publishing sector, both in academic text through their legacy publishing houses. So in 1976 or 79, I'm not sure, we had this, under the military administrator, we had an indigenization decree that said that most companies at that time had to be, I think it was 60% owned by Nigerians. So that was when a lot of the, should I say, British nationals divested from publishing houses. But whether or not it was, it produced an independence was another thing, because these houses were really still connected and affiliated to the publishing houses in the UK. And even for primary and post-primary text at that time, even up till recently, a lot of it was, Pan-African. So that actually investment in, should I say, Nigerian academics and scholarship, wasn't made because, the market was always seen as part of the UK, particularly because of the official language. But, things have really changed. Now, in recent times, you could say that we have a renaissance of Nigerian publishing, especially in general interest, trade publishing for Nigerian novels. You know, the likes of Chimamanda have, you know, done that. We have a few writers, but a lot of them, but the market is still dominated by diaspora writers, you know, so we still have that struggle. So it's still sort of UK leaning, UK dependent, and UK influenced. That authentic, organic publishing is very, very, very minute. And there are very few publishing houses doing that. But I also think it points back to, you know, in our pre-meeting when we were saying, for us publishing, you know, in these parts is very, very commercially driven. We're really more about commercial viability than anything else. Very few publishers actually think of it as a cultural responsibility and the need to preserve, be it through language, through customs, through how the books are actually published, you know, and released, you know, to the market. So we have that, should I say, we still sort of are under the umbrella of the Brits, whether we choose to recognize it or not. Yes, primarily because of their language, but, you know, because for Nigerian publishers, a lot of it doesn't make commercial sense, particularly for us because we don't have like official book policies. Which is a good and bad thing in the sense that the sector isn't really regulated. So the freedom to publishing aspect is there. Except, of course, you publish something that steps on the toes of a big politician or a strong man, you know. We had an incident in December of 2024 when a lawyer wrote a book, you know, I think it's a collection of essays, and in it he talked about a few big lawyers that are close to the president, and he was automatically arrested. So, you know, we get those kinds of scenarios and situations, but really and truly, because we are not policed, we are not sort of regulated, you know, the only legal requirement to publish a book is to obtain the ISBN number. Outside that, there isn't much regulation. And of course, because the legacy houses who still dominate academic publishing really have the financial muscle, you know, so they back the Copyright Commission to see about ensuring that their titles are not pirated. But then that leaves room for small, medium, independent like us. You know, there is no recourse for us, you know, so to say. So in terms of local language publishing, Nigeria is a very diverse country. They say we have 3 major languages, but you find that a lot of minority tribes will always dispute that. And even with English publishing, we realize that a lot of the books and a lot of the authors that we see are dominated by the 3 major tribes or major languages. So very little is done about, you know, support or even awareness. You know, I worked on a project recently. We published a local Bible. We published a Bible for one of the languages in southern Nigeria. And of course, the collective, as part of a collective, came, you know, I was a publisher consultant on that project. And everywhere they tried to get funding, they kept telling them that it's a minority language. There was not going to be any support, both from government and, you know, from agencies that would otherwise support. So that quandary is there, you know, and so that's why for a lot of publishers, it's just safest to keep it in English. But the last thing I'll add to that is that one of the areas that I think Amma would understand this as well. One of the areas that we have often overlooked, which is sort of a universal language, not just for us in Nigeria, but I think in Ghana and a lot of the Anglophone speaking parts of Africa, is Pidgin. Because, you know, Pidgin English is spoken in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Nigeria. but there's very little publishing done on that, you know. So, and I think it's just really, these are commercial decisions that publishers have to make. So we put commerce before culture. That's a long-winded introduction, but that's basically it.
Merci effectivement, Eviso, pour cet état des lieux.
Thank you very much, Eviso. It's a very interesting and exhaustive update for your context. And I think I can see some parallels and common points with our context in the French-speaking countries in Africa. Yes, Ama, you can take the floor.
You're muted. Ama, you're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we can.
I was just going to say I'm
okay.
totally in sync with all the things that you discussed. The imbalance of the language situation, and it's interesting in Ghana because there is a policy in Ghana, education policy, that language should be taught. Local languages as part of our early schooling. But because English dominates, then all the publications in all these languages that you're talking about, including Pidgin, it's like we have very rich language culture, oral, alive and well, but then the print market is undermining that. So work to be done. Then there's all this editorial independence issues, small independent publishers, large foreign publishers you're talking about, because of curriculum and the focus on educational publishing, a lot of small independent publishers are not able to, provide the kind of books that people will need to develop a culture of reading in a competitive way. Even we at Arco Books, we are trying to, and I'll be speaking a little bit about digital later, make our way in the digital arena to provide access and affordable books, but we're still threatened by the dominance of global platforms. So I think there are a lot of these imbalances in the policy environment that we need to work on. Yeah, and we have to close those gaps. Yeah. Do you want me to go on to talk about some of the challenges, or for now, that's it?
On va y venir. On va venir à ça.
Maybe just in a bit. We'll move on to that in a bit. Now I'd like to give the floor to Serge Kouam, a representative of the French-speaking country. He will take the floor and talk to us about Cameroon and Togo. He's been actively part of the mapping exercise. Serge, you have the floor. Thank you very much. My colleague mentioned a study published in June. I think it's a study that was carried out by the UNESCO.
No, it's not the UNESCO study. I've actually dropped it in the chat. It's a different one on cultural policy in Ghana. So I've actually dropped it in the chat. Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
All right, thank you for mentioning this. So about Cameroon and maybe also for Togo, I would say that to understand the publishing world with a historical point of view, I think it's, and bearing in mind the colonial history, it's very important to remind that in Cameroon, we've known three different publishing system. So because of the different colonies, so we've had first the German settlements and German colonizers, and then the French and the Brits. And each colonial period had consequences on the publishing world. So the French system was presented more as a cultural system rather than the British one that was more economic or commercial.
La réflexion qui a été dirigée, co-dirigée, on dirait, par Jacques Michon et Jean dans le cadre de cette étude.
I was also focusing a lot on a study that was carried out by two colleagues about the history of publishing system in the world starting in the 12th century. So this was very interesting. So today, the publishing world in Cameroon is well, has been impacted by this colonial history. And today, we could say that the government's body are trying to change this, especially at the local level. Now, if we want to talk about Togo, well, Togo was also colonized by the Germans and later on by the French, but not the Brits. Maybe that's the difference between Cameroon and Togo. So if I want to come back to, well, the main question, I would say that in terms of context, for Togo, well, currently, and bearing in mind the history of the country, there were several international initiatives that were launched. So, for example, we had the UNESCO Convention, and well, Cameroon ratified almost all of these tools and mechanisms. But as my colleague was saying just before, each time we need to translate these conventions into practice, and at the local level, we're facing many barriers, and it's actually very complicated. And when we actually manage to implement things at the local level, it's only for the educational publishing and school books. Since the 1990s, under the watch of the Bretton Woods agreements, there was many publishing policies that were implemented, focusing especially on education and trying to change this at the level of school books. That's when we actually felt the intervention of international bodies and mechanisms. But it's only for the educational sector and educational literature. And generally speaking, I would say that it's quite complicated to actually implement the mechanisms. So we feel like we are changing our minds every 2 minutes, saying, yes, we want to commit to that, and then it's a no. So we have small efforts, but they're not sufficient to really start the sparkle and start the fire. Something else I wanted to add here is that well, I'm talking about Cameroon and Togo here. And in Togo, there was what we've known as the state-owned publishing houses. It's something that was implemented at the beginning of the 70s. And in Senegal, for example, there was like the new publishing houses of Senegal. So we had quite a similar thing in Togo, but it was a state-owned publishing house. And they were trying to handle the question of school books. And it's something we've seen in Western Africa and other parts of Africa. And this initiative was actually private, and it was shared between private interests, the state, and other stakeholders. Something else I wanted to highlight for the case of Cameroon is the fact that maybe, as you might be aware, in Cameroon there are two English-speaking areas, which is also a heritage from the British and French colonization era. So this means that in Cameroon there can be very different publishing policies. Sometimes with the French systems, there is just one publishing of it's very one publishing mechanism. It's very centralized, and with the British system, it's more about partnership with the private sectors, and so on. So I would say that maybe the French system is a bit more independent, but that's more or less the panorama of what is going on in Cameroon. In Cameroon, because it is quite a unified country, it means that sometimes we tend to forget the former colonial boundaries and frontiers that we had at the time and are actually still having consequences today. So in Africa, we had 5 Nobel Prize in literature, and well, we're still waiting for Nobel Prize in literature coming from a French-speaking country. So we've had some coming from Tanzania, South Africa, but because of this publishing model that we've had in the French-speaking countries, well, we're still waiting to have this Nobel Prize, for example. And it illustrates the situation because in the small speaking English region of Cameroon, we have people there involved in the publishing world, representing the community. And we were working with suppliers and retailers to pass on the French, the book written in French. But still, once again, when it comes to the French system, it's quite centralized. Then I'd like to briefly talk about the logistical obstacles we are facing. So maybe you know, but at the time of the colonial time, it was forbidden to talk your mother tongue in public, especially at school. It was forbidden. So if you were caught talking your own mother tongue that were not the colonial language, then you were punished. You at school, for example, you were also punished, and you had to follow the whole education pathway in the language of the colonial power that was in the country. And that's why today the publishing in local languages is really struggling because we have this history. So, of course, we are aware of this, and the Cameroonese government created the National Superior School, so it's a high university that are training teachers and professors to put forward this training in local languages. and also to start publishing in local languages. So it's a small effort, but it's really struggling to gain more momentum.
On va dire relationnel, c'est aussi problématique.
On the level of strategy and geopolitics, it's also quite complicated. So I was talking with a friend coming from Côte d'Ivoire.
Africa Publishing Network. Voilà.
He's a friend from the Africa Publishing Network. And
dans le comité qui est le bureau, le board de l'AMNET,
so my friend is part of the AMNET, of this network, and
Malawi, c'est un pays d'Afrique australe, hein? Mais dans le porte-parole de l'Afrique centrale, dans le board de l'AMNET, qui est
and in this network,
c'est un Malawi.
I realized that there was a country that was part of this network, the Malawi. And then it really caught my attention. The interpreter apologizes. The sound of the speaker is not very audible.
Serge?
Oui.
Serge, excuse-moi. Et on t'entend pas. Excuse-moi de t'interrompre, on t'entend pas très bien.
Serge,
et les interprètes ont du mal à bien interpréter. Est-ce que tu peux peut-être te rapprocher, je sais pas, pour parler plus lentement et
get
plus
closer
fort?
to your mic or speak a bit slower or clearer? Can you hear me?
Est-ce que c'est mieux pour les interprètes? Et Yasmine dit oui, pas forcément. Pas forcément.
Dès le début, je l'avais signalé, hein, mais bon.
Yes, I mentioned it at the beginning because there are no mics. I don't know if it's because I have my speaker coming from my computer. I'm just I don't know. I thought I was speaking loud enough to be clearly heard.
Je pense que ça doit être un problème de connexion.
Slightly better, but maybe it's a connection issue. Just make sure you are still close to your mic and don't speak too quickly, please. Okay, yes, I have almost my face on my screen. So yes, that's what the situation looks like on the ground in terms of languages. And we do have this very strong heritage, negative heritage of the colonial period. It has strong consequences on our publishing policies and mechanisms. So that's what I would say. I can keep speaking a bit more, but maybe, well, feel free to come back to me later on for another question. Sorry for taking the floor. I see that Mutoni is here, and maybe you can give her the floor later on. Thank you very much, Serge, for this feedback on these two countries. I fully agree with what you've said about Togo. Then you talk about Cameroon. We have, and all my thoughts are going to Edmund, who left us recently. Serge, you are very familiar with the mapping exercise that has been done in 2019, and you've started talking about it. So my question is, what has changed since 2019? You've talked about trainings, yes, but what are the remaining obstacles today? When it comes to Cameroon, I would say there are two major changes. One that is positive and one that is negative. For the positive one in 2021, well, you just mentioned our friend from the Minister of Culture who passed away a few weeks ago. Well, this person passed a very important law in the country in December 2021, supporting small publishing efforts. And so for the past 20 years, we've had
c'est moi qui l'ai suscité quand je présidais l'association des éditeurs. Ce compte était censé recueillir
So we've had been receiving very important aid and fundings. It was at the time 1 billion French francs. Unfortunately, this funding account has been completely closed and suspended for reasons I cannot explain to you. I cannot mention. But probably because the use of this funding was not done in the proper and most adequate way. And probably that politicians got a bit involved in the use and the allocation of this fund. And so we used to have this funding mechanism, but it's suspended now. It's not working anymore. We also had another mechanism that was launched in 2021. It dates back. It's inspired from something that existed in 2014. So it's a sort of copy paste, but I would say that the paste part is not really well done. So we have a text that has been released in 2021. It's not perfect, but there's room for improvement, but it's quite interesting. That's what I would say from my experience with the mapping exercise. Now we have with us Mutoni Garland coming from Kenya, coming from Story Moja Publishers. Mutoni, would you like to take the floor?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear the question. If it was a question for me, I apologize for joining late. Connectivity issues here where I'm visiting. So if you could just tell me what the question is.
Alors, on est au premier axe du débat.
So we're on the first part of this roundtable. So we are doing this overview of the publishing context in which we're working. So what about Kenya? What about independent publishing efforts facing maybe big groups or companies? What's the context for you in terms of publishing work?
I am sorry, I can't. I don't know whether it's just the technology is a bit. I'm not understanding how I.
Ne nous entendez pas?
Are you able to follow in English, Mutoni?
If I can't, I'm not getting the interpretation in English.
Did you select the English option on the interpretation?
I'm not sure where to select that.
You have to select it at the bottom of your screen. There will be something called interpretation in the option, and you have to stick to English.
Okay.
Can you find it?
I've done that now. Yes, I've done that now.
Okay. Sorry, Yasmine, est-ce qu'on peut te demander de répéter rapidement la question?
Je vais vous répéter les questions.
Donc,
yes, I will repeat the question that you are in the English channel. So we are still in the first part of this roundtable talking about the overview of our context when it comes to publishing work and independent publishing efforts in terms of public policies, in terms of acting as an independent publishing house.
Okay, I understand. So we've been publishing children's literature and textbooks for the last 18 years at Story Moja. And there are many factors that have impacted our ability to work as an independent publisher. I would say the most important ones is government policies and government processes. So our work is tendered through government, for textbooks and rely on their curriculum guidance. It's a very complicated and difficult process, very expensive, very high barriers to participation, because even getting the books vetted after you've invested in writing them, working with authors, etc., then you face the barrier of having to pay submission fees, very significant submission fees, just to get the work vetted in order for it to be approved. And many small publishers are not able to participate for that reason. And then the second barrier, of course, are the things that are not put on the table, where...
Qu'en est-il, par exemple, des langues nationales?
What about national languages?
So the national languages are English and Kiswahili, and we publish in both languages. We also do a few translations into French and other languages, but the focus is Kiswahili English. The language is not a barrier.
Est-ce que le Kiswahili trouve sa place dans l'édition au Kenya?
And can you find room and spaces for Kiswahili in Kenya?
Yes, Kiswahili is not only the national language, it is mandated to be taught in all schools in Kenya. And in the last few years, even the international schools have to teach Kiswahili. So access to Kiswahili books is as widespread as access to English books, but the language of instruction is English. But Kiswahili is a mandatory subject within the school system. And it is more widely, it's 90% of homes and, would speak Swahili much more than they do English. English tends to be only spoken in the classroom. Outside of the classroom, it's Swahili and derivatives of Swahili, so Sheng, etc.
Merci, Mutoni. Donc,
thank you very much, Mutoni. So we keep on seeing overlapping phenomena and similarities that we're going to delve into during the second part of our debate, which is the common issues and challenges that have to do with bibliodiversity. We're going to mention freedom to publish, circulation of texts. Some of you have hinted to that topic already, but we can delve into it further. Also, we are going to mention the issues around shipping and dissemination, access to funding for independent publishing houses, and the role and actions of professional associations. I'll give the floor to Amma first in order for her to give us a few words on what's happening in Ghana.
Amma, le micro est coupé.
Amma, your mic is muted.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes. So I'd just like to highlight 4 challenges, I think, that we are facing in Ghana, touching on these issues that you talked about, and that I think many other publishers are facing on the continent also. So the first one on freedom to publish, in Ghana, we enjoy, relative freedom of expression. Publishers are allowed on paper to publish as freely as they wish, but we have these we still have issues of political sensitivities and financial constraints that affect what people can actually publish. You might be aware in Ghana, we've had a lot of talk and debate about our anti-LGBTQ policy in Ghana. It's called the Safe Family Values Act. And so for publisher, for example, to publish anything related to LGBTQ issues in Ghana would be a challenge. Second one, I think, is circulation.
Alors, à ce sujet, Amma, est-ce que vous avez...
So, on that topic, Amma, do you have something that we have here in Togo, which is a legal deposit, and that could make sure that a form of censorship is applied to you. Do you have something in that vein in Ghana?
Yes, we do. We do have publications having to be. We have a board, a publishing board that can, intervene if text is deemed not to be conforming to what is considered legal and
Alors,
healthy.
avant de répondre aux autres volets de la question, je vois qu'il y a Serge qui voudrait rajouter
before
quelque chose.
answering the rest of the question, I see that Serge wanted the floor on this topic. Serge, let me give you the floor.
Ah, je pensais que tu voulais
I thought
intervenir
you
par rapport
wanted
à ce que vient
to
de dire
jump
Ama.
in on what and react to what Amma just said. No, I did not want. Okay, sorry. Then I give you the floor back, Amma, in the case.
So freedom is there, but just financial constraints and the kind of financial support, investment that would be given to material that is not considered politically in line with policies and government policies, it would be a bit of a challenge. So if you can afford the risks as a publisher, you can go ahead and publish. But a lot of publishers wouldn't venture into territories that might be, controversial. The second issue is circulation of text distribution. It's still a major Achilles heel in Ghana and many parts of Africa. Moving books across our borders is just so difficult, expensive. The tariffs, customs, duties on every aspect, along the chain of infrastructure of publishing. So even getting a book, sending a book from Accra to Lagos can cost more than it is in getting the same book from London. And digital, for me, can provide a way to get around the distribution access problem. But we have issues of, data, cost of data, internet connectivity, which still prevent a lot of readers from accessing ebooks or audiobooks, for example. So distribution is still a big issue that we need to tackle. And then finance, access to finance, banks and investors in Ghana don't really see publishing as a viable business. So a lot of publishers, independent publishers, fund their own operations from their own personal savings or small grants. And so it's not sustainable. I mean, personally, at our Books, our audiobook platform was built from grant funding, and it is really, really difficult and challenging to access local financing because we don't sort of, fit into the investment boxes that are seen as viable. So financing is still one of the big challenges. And then lastly, I think in terms of our professional associations, we do have in Ghana a Book Publishers Association, and there's a regional APNET body, and there's the African Books Collective, which is based in the UK, but focuses on African books. So they help to train us and, negotiate book deals and terms and so on. But I think they're not well-resourced. They're really under-resourced, and they need stronger support, our Book Publishing Association, so that they can really, push governments towards implementing better book policies and helping small publishers. So, freedom of expression is there, but that's not enough. We need to be free to circulate, distribute, get our books across the continent, and we need to be free to access the finance that we need and to be sustainable. Yeah.
Merci Ama. Je vais rebondir sur juste le collectif des livres africains.
Thank you very much, Amma. I would like to react to the association you've mentioned, the Collective for African Books. Is it specifically available for English-speaking publishing houses since it's based in London, or is it not?
Yeah, it is. It is specifically focused on English-speaking African literature and also academic text. But the irony is that it is based in the UK and led and managed out of Oxford, in the Oxford vicinity. But they have most of the major African academic literature publications working with them.
Merci beaucoup pour la précision.
La parole va very much.
Pour la même question.
And I will now ask the same questions to Ibiso on freedom to publish, on the circulation of texts, on the access to funding, and the roles of professional associations. Ibiso, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I think the Ghanaian and Nigerian experiences are quite similar, you know. So I'd alluded to it earlier. We're really, free to publish, but I think two points I would like to emphasize for us. We're free to publish, within boundaries, and I think because Nigeria purports to be a very religious country, so things around a religion, especially Islam, in the north. The north is really sensitive. So far, a fatwa has not been issued on the life of any book, any author, but on journalists, at least a couple of journalists, who had written things in the newspaper, So, we're only free to the degree that it does not offend certain religious sensibilities. But that's on one hand. On the other hand, one of the biggest challenges we have, in publishing, I'll speak as an independent publisher, is the funnel in from the educational sector. Now, during our era of military rule, our educational system was really broken down and really really destroyed. So our literacy rates at the moment are about 57%, and of the 57, of that 57%, it's just people who can maybe read and write to post-primary. They never really qualify that. But, that is important to say this. Government, it's not rare to find not fully literate people in certain government agencies. So you get a pass in the sense that, with us, we have, with our ISBN, when you make the application for ISBN, you also have to do a deposit in the National Library. Now, the extent to which the National Library checks the deposit is another thing. So because of that, you can get away with it. And also it's a corruption thing as well, where really and truly the agencies are run around corrupt practices, if you understand what I mean. So they don't fully function in the capacity they're supposed to function. So that leaves room for us to freely publish what we want except, of course, a political or whatever personality highlights, the book, in that regard. So that's on one hand. But, the publishing sector does not exist in isolation in Nigeria. It is in the context of a corrupt and badly educated society. Let's put it like that. So you can imagine other challenges that could come with that. As for we have Nigeria, we love associations. We like bodying and banding together. Now, I can only speak for myself in this regard. As an independent publisher, I'm not part of any of them. I have tried to join a few, but I didn't see the value they could give me, as an independent publisher in terms of the vision and what I wanted to do. And a lot of it is around talk shops. It's almost like to fulfill certain requirements, so to say, So and also like our Nigerian Publishers Association is very heavy on academic publishing. So it's really academic publishing, and I think one or two old children publishers are part of it. But we have associations, but I don't see it as being impactful generally for the publishing ecosystem. So another thing is the publishing association, from my understanding, works quite closely with the Ministry of Education, which now comes back to the context of, corruption and all of that. So they banned it. I'm not accusing anyone of corruption. I'm just saying, that is our context. That is the real context. I'm sure there's impact for some others, but I've never felt led to join anyone because I don't see the impact in, for my publishing house. And then I think one of the reasons I really want to talk about, one of the things I want to talk about for us, especially I'm a non-academic independent publisher, is demand. Very often we take for granted the extent of the demand for the books that we publish, but we are constrained by like a unified marketing force and very serious competition with diaspora writers, to the point that a lot of independents right now, their house lists are dominated by Nigerian versions of diaspora Nigerian writers. So that's all this. So it's easier to sell those books. Back to what I was saying about, commercial viability. It's easier to sell those books because you have to make no effort to promote or market these books. The UK does it for you. There have been one or two publishers that actually have they won't call it a co-edition. They will call it a Nigerian book, but it's actually printed and published in the UK by a UK publisher, but with the Nigerian publisher's details on the copyright page. So that's a huge challenge we are having. It's almost like we're competing with ourselves, and that competition is inhibiting the growth and the progress of our own ecosystem, especially for non-academic. And then finally, distribution, I just to add to what Amma says, we have the same problems as well. But what has helped me, because at the moment my books are sold in Kenya, in Burkina Faso, in Ghana, and in most of the Nigerian cities. What has helped me for those has been because I've treated the book not as a book, but because I sell other things as well across border. So I treat it as a product like that. So I'm always looking for solutions from traders, not necessarily fellow book publishers. Like traders, especially from China and India, always know the hacks on how to get things to Africa and always know the cheapest means. So that has helped us, but it's still expensive. But even in, getting distribution across, what has worked for us is finding partners in specific locations and just dealing with only those partners, so to say, like a distributor, and just dealing with those partners. But the challenges are still there, especially for us in Nigeria, because this year, I think in the last year, we've had to increase fuel prices like 2 or 3 times, although it's regularizing now. However, cars are our mode of transportation. So we don't have trains. We don't have trains for trade. You can't afford air. Air travel is now so expensive. So that, that makes it a challenge. And then I think, what was the last thing you talked about? Yeah, funding is the same thing. Funding, I think funding is a universal problem for all of us. Yes, yes. I think what's particularly worrying for us in the publishing space in Nigeria is even when there are grants and supports for creative economy, they often leave out publishing because they often see publishing as primarily a tool for education and not as a cultural thing. So even among the creative economy, you see grants for like, oh, the publisher publicize it as for creative economy. By the time you go to apply as a publisher, they'll be like, oh, actually, there's no room for publishing. So I guess, it's a universal problem. We all struggle with funding. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's it.
Merci,
Yeah.
Iso.
Thank you, Lisa. I will now give the floor to Mutoni for the same questions around freedom to publish, circulation of texts, access to funding, and the role and the actions of professional associations.
Mutoni, votre micro. Mutoni, le micro.
Mutoni, your mic is off.
Mutoni, le micro.
Mutoni, your mic is off.
There are so many similarities between what I've heard is going on in, I don't know if you can hear me well enough. I'm having a lot of internet issues today.
Oui.
But there are lots of similarities between what I've heard in Nigeria and is going on in Nigeria and elsewhere that it echoes the situation in Kenya. So I'll just add rather than repeat some of the points that have been made. So I would say one of the biggest challenges that we have when it comes to, say, the freedom to publish is things like the additional gatekeeping that goes on the part of the vetting bodies. And it's not just in terms of, there's a lot of sensitivity with any content, for instance, around sex or around, to the point where literally, even for teenagers, it can be problematic to portray that student's case or let's say, and you obviously cannot touch LGBTQ issues or anything like that. But it is, it's even more troublesome, I find, when it comes to, say, history topic, way that you cover, for instance, the past history about the slavery that happened on from the continent. There's so many sort of guidelines for other problems in the culture. And also a lot of restrictions around anything to do with criticism of religion. And so much sensitivity that it curtails some of the writers' freedoms. And then another critical issue is when it comes to just books, availability of books and types of books. Because of the difficulty of financing, the publishers tend to publish mainly the books that are required for exams or the curriculum. And because of that, there's not a wide range of books for, that are geared in the market to grow the reading. So, pleasure. And because of that focus, there also isn't work done by the parts of the Kenya Publishers Association or other associations, even the National Book Development Council. There's not much work done in terms of promoting reading beyond exams. And it results in sad sort of things that we see in society, like the popularity of book banning parties. Once students leave high school, they feel, oh, I've read all the books that I need to have read, because the reading process itself is so painful and it is hinged on exams. Then the other thing that you asked, the other thing that has impacted by the focus on the curriculum is that because so much of the money in the book industry is related to government, and government has a tendency of paying late, or the amount of investment that you have to make upfront before you can get any kind of rewards out of it, then what happens is it impacts a lot of cash flow in the industry, and it is I don't know about other places, but it's a recurring issue that we see here, where publishers are paid late, they therefore aren't paying royalties on time. It impacts everybody within the, within the publishing infrastructure, and it's caused a lot of difficulty. In terms of the circulation and distribution of text, I have to say it's not a challenge when it's a system. It's only a challenge because in the system they provide all the information you need in order to get the book into the schools. However, the challenge really lies in that it is such a restricted reading list, because basically the schools will buy that which either the government has recommended or that the teachers have recommended. So the buying practice in bookshops is for parents to go in with a book list written by the teacher that says these are the books that you buy. There isn't a browsing culture or an encouragement to read outside of that restricted list, which makes it very difficult for publishers who want to do kind of literary work or work outside of the curriculum. It makes it difficult to achieve a critical mass of buyers of the books to therefore justify the kind of investment that publishers need to make. And that's a barrier, I think, for entry. And finally, I'll just add that there are not enough libraries even for those who want to read and are interested in non-curriculum reading. There are only 70 or so libraries, maybe add another 100 in small community type of libraries, for a population of 7 million or 60 million people. So there are just insufficient ways to access, books. There's a lot of private initiative in this area, but a lot more, I think, needs to be done.
Merci beaucoup, Mutoni. Donc, avant de passer à l'espace francophone avec Serge.
Thank you very much, Mutoni. So before going to the French-speaking part of Africa with Serge, I'd like to give the floor back to Anna to maybe react to what her colleagues have said on the the English-speaking part of Africa. And Amma, your mic is still muted.
Yeah, I think it's open now. And Tony, thank you for that. We share a lot of the similar challenges. In fact, just recently, we had a recently ended Ghana Book Fair in August this year. And one of the things that came out of a report sort of out of the post Ghana Book Fair outcomes was that Ghana has only 139 public libraries serving 35 million people. So you can see that I agree with you, it's just, just so alarmingly inadequate. If we really want to drive development through education and access to learning and books, we need to, we need to work on those statistics. And even those 139 are not particularly well stocked, except the handful that are in the big cities. So yes, we have that challenge. I think, yeah, I didn't sort of really talk about, I think languages is also one of the things.
Merci, Amma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amma.
Go ahead. Je pense que le micro de... Vous m'entendez? Le micro d'Amma.
Amma's microphone is muted again.
Vous m'entendez?
Can you hear me,
Yes.
Amma?
Yes, I can hear you. I thought I was, going on a little bit too long and you wanted to pass over to
Non, pas du tout.
Okay.
No, not at all, not at all. You can please have one more minute and keep on.
Yeah. So I think, I really have nothing particularly else to add to my colleagues. We share very much the same difficulties and challenges, and we're looking to tackle and find solutions together. to some of these things. No.
Merci beaucoup, Ama. Et
Thank you very much, Ama. And I react and agree to the fact that libraries are important. In Togo, we have some 60 libraries. So until recently, we had good libraries, but since the end of the public reading project, nothing is happening on this, although it's a very important point to bear in mind. I'll now give the floor to Serge, who's going to share a few words on the French-speaking countries. Thank you, Yasmin. So, around the concept of bibliodiversity, I think it's really useful and it's at the heart of the Alliance's work since its inception. It was actually coined by activist publishing houses. We know the UNESCO Convention of 2005 to protect bibliodiversity. And of course, this is something that's still very much relevant today. I'd like to start by the easiest question to answer. So the role and actions of professional associations in Cameroon, nothing much is happening, I should say. I kick-started an association in the 1990s. I was the head of this association for some years, and then the second one was created afterwards, and I couldn't tell you what we're doing now. I think there's a union for public shop owners and for publishers, but this is all. And I can tell you that those associations are struggling to properly work and properly do their job, because the public powers remain mutic and do not really help them. In terms of access to funding, well, funding is a mere dream for people who know the local banking structure. You know that financial products that are put forward by local banks are not long-run investments. So if you sell a book, it will sell for 3, 5, 10 years. And so the profitability will be there in the long run, and you cannot really fund the long or medium run with the banking system. In terms of public funding now, I hinted to that earlier, the Cameroon government created a system that was called the Special Account to support publishing and book policies, which is really sort of all-round structure because the government didn't really know what to do. But I don't really know what are the consequences of this because there was no study of impact, and funding has been suspended for the structure for reasons that I'm not aware of. And one of the goals of this special account was to guarantee and protect the loans. It was kind of inspired on what the International Organization of Francophonie tried to do to guarantee funding for the book and the publishing world. So this special account took inspiration from this, but I could actually not mention any project that received actual funding from this mechanism. So you see that we are really struggling, and we're struggling to find sources of funding. We do not really have other institutional other funding institutions, sorry, that could help us. So I can tell you that access to funding is really difficult, and it's probably the highest barrier that we need to work around in my country. So for the publishing of texts, I think that Cameroon authors do sell a lot in other countries and are visible in the rest of the continent and in other countries. Although one can lament the fact that very often they are being published by non-Cameroonese publishing houses. maybe they started working with a local publishing house, but then they go to a French publishing house, for instance. So we do sell with Cameroon authors, but at the local level, it's not the case that much. It's the case with the official languages. If a book is published in French, for instance, it's hard to translate it into English, and the same goes the other way around. It's also the case to translate between official languages and local languages. There's no funding and solutions for this. The government kickstarted a project a few years ago, which was the National Committee for Promoting Multilingualism or something. I can't even get the name right. But they created this structure that unfortunately does not take into account translations.
So there is very few possibilities of translation between official languages and local languages. And it's a very, very big obstacle at the local level. Then if we talk about logistics barriers, as I've mentioned, the local publishing system finds its roots in the French system. And because the French system was started in Paris and was then exported to our country, we have only one retailer trying to handle all the distribution of the books. And today, well, we have a very blatant difficulties because we never had a real culture of book dissemination, book distribution, and today it's really complicated for us to put this into place. And of course, it's feeding a lot of reflection and discussions. Then when it comes to the freedom of publishing, I would say that, yes, we have this principle of freedom of publishing, and the big disappointment, of course, is censorship. So 5 years ago, Cameroon passed a law about legal deposit. I've mentioned this before. And since the implementation of this law, it's possible to make that. It means that you have a lot of preconditions to actually have your book being published. So it's an obstacle to publishing. So yes, in Cameroon we can publish in the appropriate time frame. We can introduce a legal deposit, but it also represents some obstacles. In Cameroon, the Ministry of Culture is in charge of the examination of the legal deposits. But in Togo, it's the ministry. It's another ministry. It's the Internal Affairs Ministry, Home Affairs Ministry, in charge of this. So it's a big difference between the two countries. And in Togo, for the past 2 years, I could say that Togo, is working with digital legal deposit. And yes, I think it's into place since 2022. So there's the possibility of doing digital legal deposit. It's very convenient. But despite these two options, the possibility of legal deposit in Cameroon or digital legal deposit in Togo, we are still struggling to find exact figures to know how many books have been published, because this service of legal deposit is not working really well. And maybe something else I should mention here when it comes to retailing and book distribution, we're facing a sort of contradiction when it comes to almost every French-speaking countries in Western Africa. So you have Central Africa and in other French-speaking countries where you still have the use of the CFA franc. And you know that in Western Africa, English-speaking countries, Angola and others, each country have their own currency, and it's hindering the circulation and the distribution of books. In Central Africa and Western Africa, we have the same currency, the CFA francs, and it is supposed to promote and to facilitate the distribution of the book. But the contradiction is that it's actually not the case. I really struggle to send books to Gabon or to other countries like Chad or other countries in Central Africa. Two advantages, though, that we can mention for these two zones. So we have the military community of Central Africa is quite advantageous because it's a single customs area, and that's where we have a more advantageous situation when it comes to customs tariffs and importation. So it's quite easy for us then to have the book circulating within this single customs area. And it's well, thanks to the countries of this region that we have this single customs area. Well, obviously, if you have a closer look on the ground, yes, there are discrepancies. I have a colleague who wants to, for example, send a book to Ghana, and well, he's facing obstacles because if the customs officers, if the police see that that he is trying to pass a book from a border to another, he can actually get into trouble. So depending on the spaces, depending on the borders, it's quite complicated to have a book circulating because, of course, on the ground you can be facing corruption practices, corruption attitudes. So yes, we promote the principle of the freedom of edition, but the reality sometimes is that we do face censorship. And yes, we have sometimes gray zones when it comes to communication about these policies. And well, the public support that we used to have in terms of direct funding that allowed us to have direct loans at the bank is not working at all. And yes, generally speaking, on the different areas, it can be really ineffective. Thank you very much, Serge.
Oui, je disais, je pourrais reprendre mot à mot ce que tu as dit sur le Togo,
notamment sur I really agree with what you've said about Togo.
Je donne brièvement la parole à Ibiso. Merci d'être
Cameroon.
très rapide. 1 minute.
So we are going to close this roundtable. We have just 1 or 2 minutes together. Ibiso, yes, if you want to say something. Ibiso, your mic is off.
Yes.
Ibiso, yes, if you want to say something, please go ahead. Just a few minutes.
Yeah, very quickly. Just to add to a couple of the things that Serge had said. I think for us, distribution, what we found in the last, I'll say 8 years, but particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, is we have independent, very small bookshops that have been very good, especially for general trade like myself, non-academic, are very good at actually generating interest for books and pushing numbers. By numbers I mean a couple of hundreds, which isn't bad, and a lot of them have been influenced by Book Talk. So you have this usually they're really young people in their early 20s. They read a book they really like, make noise on it on Book Talk. People contact them, and then I know of at least 3 bookshops that have started like that, primarily from bookshops. And they've been very good at, just banding people around similar titles together. A lot of them are really just focused on Nigerian and African books. So that's helped. That's, really helped with our distribution. They're like food soldiers, grassroots all over Nigeria. They read a book, they like it, they make noise on it on Book Talk. People contact them and they start selling. They approach us to say, look, we've got, these inquiries about your book. Can we say if we buy, a few copies, do we get a discount? We're like, yeah, you get a bookseller discount. And at least 2 booksellers have opened, through that means. So I just thought, I should add that. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Ibiso. C'est la transition parfaite vers la troisième
partie. Thank you very much, Ibiso. I think it's the perfect segue to the last part. So together, because we're going to talk about future prospects. So could you tell us in 1 or 2 sentences, because we need to close, in 1 or 2 sentences, what do you think about the future in terms of initiatives to be put in place for translations or a better way of working together for co-publishing, for example? Denis, if you want to go first. Mutini, yeah.
Yes, happy to do that. So a couple of things occurred to me as I was listening to my colleagues in the industry. One is I think the association should play a stronger lobbying role. So the publishing associations across the continent, like in Kenya, there's a 16% VAT on all books. I think that needs to go. And we talk about it, but I think there needs to be stronger lobbying on the part of government, because 16% added on is actually works out to something like 20%, and that's a big cost to add on to the price of a book. The other thing is I feel the associations should work harder to promote books and just build up the reading culture. At the moment, it's left pretty much to independent publishers who are financially constrained. I think the other thing that I feel really strongly about is that as an industry, we should be training more editors, not just talking about the readers, but a key part of the ecosystem. I feel needs a lot of work, needs the resources put behind it, and maybe there are continental answers to it. Maybe we can work together in some way. Because especially if you talk about, say, publishing in other languages or publishing outside of textbooks, the editorial talent, I feel like really needs development. And then the last thing I'll just talk about is there's a need to really think about, how do we push for procurement transparency? Because like it or not, the government, plays such a large role in the financial structure of publishing companies. So lobbying for that, transparency around that would make a big difference. And then finally, I think it's back to libraries. If we truly want to democratize reading, if we want to tackle the big challenges we have across the continent on literacy, just the ability to read and write, so many schools are marginalized. Half the populations, I think, across the continent haven't acquired the ability to read and write at the correct grade level. And I think that's something that needs all our concerted effort. So while we might co-publish, we might do other initiatives to work together better, I feel like at the core of it, libraries would be a central pillar. That's what I wanted to say. Merci. I don't know if you want to
Merci
continue.
beaucoup. Ce sont effectivement des propositions très
Thank
concrètes.
you so much. It's a very concrete proposals of things we could do together. Very interesting. Thank you. Ibiso, yes. Very briefly, in just a few sentences.
I think Muthoni put it perfectly, because I think very often we focus on the publishing aspect. If we can, we need solutions that for us, strengthen the entire value chain. So not just, on our end as a publisher, but also the value chain of actually production. In Nigeria, one of the things that we struggle with, we still import paper and there's taxation on paper. And, that automatically makes printing books here very, very expensive. It's actually cheaper to print in China or India and have them here, landed here, delivered to our warehouse than to print the same book in Nigeria. So it's that whole entire value chain support, value chain strengthening, and not just taking one aspect of the value chain. Even another thing in Nigeria, we have a lot of festivals and a lot of prizes, but very often it will be just focusing on one aspect of the entire publishing ecosystem. So I think holistic solutions, right up from the professionals that work in the sector to, support industries, because they feed in as well. And also right up to the reader. I think it's a general African problem that our readers are struggling. We have readers, we have audiences, but it's actually how to get these books to them, be it academic or non-academic. And one of the main issues is costs. Costs are so high. So I think I agree with Muthoni that that's where, associations can come in and do some kind of public-private sector synergy and partnerships to, bring real solutions, real practical solutions. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Ibiso.
Thank you very much, Ibiso. Very, very interesting. Holistic solutions. Ama, do you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. So totally agree with my colleagues about capacity building. That's critical. If we want to nurture, the next generation of publishers, we need the editors, we need the translators. So the capacity building aspects, there's so many opportunities there to grow. Secondly, I'd like to talk about digital, because I think digital innovation is the way that we can get around some of these barriers of the print infrastructure and the limitation, getting access to books. But that digital only succeeds, of course, if the government will support us with data, affordable data, devices, support for devices in classrooms and so on. But I truly believe that there are huge opportunities for access and distribution that we can use digital innovations to solve. Thirdly, I think I mentioned that report that I referenced, the cultural policy and publishing in Ghana.
Merci beaucoup, Ama. Serge?
Oh, a quick one, just more about the cultural policy. I think Ghana is revising its policy to make publishing industry, or let's say exciting enough for investment. And I'm looking forward to see how, when publishing is placed in a cultural and context, it might stimulate getting access to the finance. Thank you.
Merci, Ama. Serge?
Thank you very much, Ama. Serge?
Nous avons survécu au numérique. Maintenant, il faut entrer en prière pour ne pas disparaître.
So yes, we are trying to embrace this new digital world, and now let's pray to try to survive to the rise of AI and all these technological innovations. I fully agree with what has been said. We need to keep talking together, and maybe another idea could be to, for example, for the French-speaking countries, to try to organize a specific session of discussion on public book policies. That could be an idea, to organize this discussion together. And I feel that we need a momentum. We need more. We need something else to get together and to try to exert some pressure.
Donc, pour moi, c'est le vœu que je peux formuler.
So that's what I would,
Une session spéciale, par exemple, la
that's my
francophonie
wish.
soit organisée
Maybe,
au plus haut
yes, we could
niveau pour
organize a session
réfléchir
for
et proposer
specifically
peut-être des modèles de
French-speaking
politique
countries
publique
in
comme ça
Africa and
qui
specifically for
questionnerait ces
English-speaking
sujets-là
countries
pour que
in
les choses
Africa
avancent un tout petit peu
to talk
dans la
about
francophonie
public book policies
africaine.
and
C'est à
see
peu
what's
près ce que je peux
happening
faire
on the
en termes
continent and how we
de
can get
réflexion.
together. That's what I would
C'est
say.
une excellente proposition, Serge.
Excellent
Avant de
proposal,
donner la parole
Serge.
au
Thank you very
public, si
much.
on a encore
Before
le
giving
temps,
the floor to
Yama qui voudrait faire
our
une
guests,
dernière
I think we have
intervention.
Amma who would like to say something. Final word. Final words. Sorry.
Alors, toujours le micro, je pense, voilà.
I think your mic is mute.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Okay, I thank you for that. I think the only thing I'd like to add is I think more and more collaboration between the Francophone and Anglophone publishing industry, because too many of our stories are not moving across, are restricted in one language. English, all our African stories written in French, stuck in the French language and so forth. The English Anglophone stories are stuck in Anglophone language. So we do need to break those barriers and those silos. And I think the co-publishing translations are key into French, English, and then, of course, into our African languages. That will be really bibliodiversity in action. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour toutes vos interventions.
Thank you so much for all your interventions and your proposals. Are there any questions? Yes, yes means just it's just going to take a few minutes because we have another roundtable coming soon and we need to get ready for that.
Pas de questions?
I don't see any questions. So, Yasmin, before you conclude, I would like to thank and to congratulate the students of the ESTIC University in Cameroon. There are so many with us here connected. So, thank you for being with us.
Avant de conclure, moi, je vais remercier nos partenaires.
Yes, and before concluding, I would like to thank our partners, the OIF and the CNL. Thank you very much. I think we saw through this roundtable that there are, yes, differences between the Anglophone and Francophone countries, but also a lot of common points. We've mentioned several things like associations, diving deeper into the digital world, and trying to get together when it comes to public book policies. I really agree with what Serge had said just at the end, trying to encourage and to open new discussions about this at the regional or linguistic level. Thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you to the Alliance. Thank you to Laurence and Camille for organizing this beautiful roundtable. And I see that Kenza would like to take the floor, or Safa also wanted to take the floor, I think. I don't know if you have still a few minutes. It's not a hand raise, I believe. It's just applause. Yes, it's just the reaction of applause. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, Yasmin. I see that we have one of the students from the ESTIC who raised their hand. We can give them the floor very briefly. Your mic is mute. Make sure you open the mic. We just wanted to say that we've been delighted to take part in this roundtable. We were so happy to follow and to take part of this initiative. So, as it has been said, we are students of the ESTIC University in Cameroon in information and communication, specializing in publishing work. So we have been closely talking and exchanging with Mr. Serge. and the question of publishing efforts and the book in Africa, and especially French-speaking Africa, is challenging, especially because of the colonial heritage. And there is a big potential, and we have decided to get involved in this beautiful initiative that's called the AMNET. And I must say that we are quite proud. We are proud to get further involved in this initiative. And we are really happy because we took a lot of notes during the meeting. We've learned a lot by listening to you. It's been very enriching, actually. And it's been beautiful to hear your intervention, to know also what's happening directly for you on the ground. And it's great for us also to stop the theory that we have always from our courses, and to get into something more practical, more tangible as the work you're doing. It's I think it's for us giving us a sort of light rod. We know where we're going thanks to this intervention. We know what the future could look like for us, and it's very enriching. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful. This roundtable is it's crucial for us to be able to follow this. It's a great overview of what the world could look like, how we could try to also change the society, change the editorial, the publishing world, and make it better. So, yes, that's it. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. And we also wanted to say that we are delighted to have you with us. I believe the ESTIC is the only school that exists to train in publishing jobs for French-speaking countries. Thank you very much for being here. As a reminder, Babilica is still happening today. There are further events. You can have the program, you can access to the program online. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Merci beaucoup, Yasmine, et toutes et tous pour
Thank you very much,
cette table ronde, et
Yasmine.
à bientôt.
Thank you
Merci
to each
encore.
and every one of you for this roundtable.